and he saw an ambush being set up by the Viet Cong, and he saw them getting ready to fire on his patrol, and he yelled back to warn them.
For years, Chuck Norris stood as the face of discipline, respect, and ironclad honor, an action legend who never let emotions take the wheel. But at 85, that cool silence finally broke. He revealed the names of the men he could never forgive, the ones who crossed lines even he couldn't ignore. And when Chuck Norris calls you out, Hollywood listens, because if he's got beef with you, you must have done something unforgettable. So let's dive. But before, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you love golden Hollywood stories. Now let's dive right in, starting with number 1, Shia LaBeouf. The actor Chuck Norris refused to respect. Nobody ever imagined these two would collide. Picture it. Chuck, the calm martial arts icon who built his legacy on discipline and respect, standing next to Hollywood's most unpredictable fireball. Sounds like sparks waiting to fly. It all went down in the late 2000s, when both men were hired for a commercial project. On paper, it sounded like a fun mix, 2 generations of action coming together. But once the cameras rolled, the tension hit hard. Chuck walked in the way he always did, focused, respectful, and locked in to get the job done. Shia, on the other hand, rolled in like he owned the place. Crew members didn't sugarcoat it. They said Chuck came in calm and prepared. Shia came in like a storm. That storm meant unscripted lines, extra long speeches that no one asked for, demanding retakes when the director had already said cut, and blowing up the schedule like it didn't exist. To the younger crew, Shia's wild energy might have looked like raw passion. But to Chuck Norris, it screamed disrespect. For him, discipline wasn't just a word. It was everything. What Shia called creativity, Chuck saw as pure chaos. And chaos was one thing Norris refused to tolerate. Instead of snapping back, Chuck did what true masters do. He pulled away. He kept his answers short, avoided small talk, and the moment the cameras stopped rolling, he was gone. His silence said more than any confrontation ever could. Then, in 2020, Norris dropped a single cryptic line on Facebook that left fans buzzing. Fame without discipline is chaos. That single line from Chuck Norris hit like a thunderclap. He didn't have to call anyone out by name. Everyone instantly knew who he meant. The clash was settled right then and there. One man stood for control and respect, the other thrived on unpredictability, and after that, they never shared a set again. Now let's talk about number 2, Steven Seagal, the wannabe who pushed things too far. Chuck Norris rarely speaks badly about anyone, but when it came to Seagal, he made an exception and didn't hold back one bit. Norris once dismissed him as a wannabe who will never be. Coming from a man like Chuck, who built his career on discipline and respect, those words hit like a knockout punch. But Seagal had brought it on himself. When Seagal burst onto the Hollywood scene in the late 80s, he showed up with major swagger. He bragged about being the first Westerner to run a dojo in Japan and hit the big screen with a cold, ruthless fighting style that caught everyone's eye. People were curious, some even impressed, until Seagal started running his mouth. He began calling out other martial arts legends, saying that Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris were just performers, not real fighters. That statement lit the martial arts world on fire. Respect vanished overnight. Bob Wall, Bruce Lee's old friend and one of Chuck's closest allies, wasn't about to let it slide. He rounded up legends like Bill Superfoot, Wallace, and Benny the Jet Urquidez, and basically threw down the challenge. Prove it. Step in the ring. But Seagal didn't step in. He stayed quiet. And in the martial arts world, silence doesn't make you mysterious. It makes you look weak. Chuck didn't need to fight him. He didn't need a press war or a media circus. One sharp line from him, "A wannabe will never be," was enough to end the conversation. Everyone knew exactly where Norris stood after that, and the divide between them never healed. While Chuck kept his integrity solid as ever, Seagal's reputation began to crumble piece by piece, scandal after scandal. Hollywood saw who stayed real and who couldn't back up the talk. Now on to number 3, Jean-Claude Van Damme, the story that started with admiration and ended in pure disappointment. Back in the early 1980s, Van Damme was just another struggling dreamer in Los Angeles, hustling odd jobs just to survive. One of those gigs landed him at Woody's Wharf, a bar co-owned by none other than Chuck Norris. At the time, Chuck was already a major action star, and Van Damme looked up to him like a mentor. For a brief moment, it seemed like the start of a powerful friendship. It looked like a friendship straight out of a movie, one that could have become a legendary partnership. But when Jean-Claude Van Damme skyrocketed to fame with Bloodsport and Kickboxer, everything flipped. The humble student who once looked up to Chuck Norris turned into a Hollywood wildcard. Behind the camera, Van Damme's charm disappeared fast. Word spread that he'd show up late, demand script rewrites, and argue with directors like he ran the studio. Fame didn't humble him, it supercharged his ego. To Chuck Norris, the man who built his entire life around respect and control, that was a red flag. What was once admiration quickly started looking like a liability. In the early 90s, there were even big talks about pairing the two in a martial arts thriller called The Eagle Shadow, a project that was supposed to mirror Chuck's iconic face-off with Bruce Lee in The Way of the Dragon. Fans were hyped, imagining a blockbuster showdown, but according to insiders, Van Damme's unpredictable attitude and constant contract demands torpedoed the whole deal. Norris never publicly dragged him, but his silence said everything. And then, years later, that silence cracked. In 2001, during a martial arts expo, someone asked Chuck what he thought about Van Damme, and his answer was just one cutting word: undisciplined. Coming from Chuck Norris, that wasn't just a burn, it was a verdict. For Chuck, discipline wasn't just part of martial arts, it was martial arts. Without it, the code was broken. Van Damme later admitted his own struggles with addiction and ego, but by then, the damage was already done. Whatever brotherhood once existed between them, gone forever. Now we move to number 4, Alec Baldwin, when comedy turned into a full-blown war. This feud shocked everyone because Chuck Norris and Alec Baldwin never even worked together, never shared a scene, never traded a single movie line. Yet somehow, their clash got louder than any Hollywood fight scene. And this one wasn't about acting, it was about America itself. Chuck has always been open about his beliefs, faith, family, and a rock-solid loyalty to conservative values. He wasn't just another movie star, he was a man of conviction. He backed political figures like Huckabee, Romney, and Trump, and wrote passionately about protecting traditional values. To millions of fans, Chuck wasn't just the guy who threw kicks. He was a voice defending what they believed in. Then came Alec Baldwin, week after week on Saturday Night Live, slipping into that orange wig and impersonating Donald Trump. Audiences laughed hard. But to Chuck and many of his supporters, it didn't feel like comedy. It felt like mockery. Mockery of a president he respected and of millions of Americans who shared his faith and patriotism. By 2017, Norris had finally had enough. He broke his silence in a fiery blog post blasting what he called Hollywood elites who ridicule faith and patriotism. That post wasn't just about Baldwin. It was about an entire culture war brewing in Hollywood. And just like that, a feud that never started on a film set turned into one of the loudest off-screen battles of Chuck Norris's career. Chuck never mentioned Alec Baldwin by name, but everyone knew exactly who that blog post was aimed at. It was a clean shot fired without saying a single word. What made their clash so fascinating was the quiet. No heated interviews, no online call-outs, no screaming headlines, just two men standing firm on opposite ends of a cultural battlefield. And that silence? It spoke louder than any argument ever could. Two icons, both stubborn in their beliefs, staring each other down without ever meeting face to face. Now for number 5, Bruce Lee, the rivalry that never truly died. Everybody remembers it. The legendary showdown in The Way of the Dragon, 1972. Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris, locked in the Roman Colosseum in one of the most unforgettable movie fights ever filmed. Even 50 years later, fans still replay that scene like it just dropped yesterday. On screen, it was pure fire. But behind the scenes, it was supposed to be nothing more than choreography. Two friends celebrating martial arts through art, not competition. Chuck always said he respected Bruce deeply. They trained together, joked around, and pushed each other to be better. That fight was meant to honor their craft, not create enemies. But audiences refused to let it rest. The question kept echoing. Who would win for real? Everywhere Chuck went, that's all people wanted to ask. Not about his black belt titles, not about his hit TV shows or movie career, just Bruce Lee. In one interview, Norris sighed and said, "People always ask if Bruce could beat me. They don't care about anything else." That endless comparison cut deep. Not because Chuck disliked Bruce, but because the world had turned a friendship into a rivalry that neither man wanted. The martial arts community only made it worse. Some claimed Bruce's Jeet Kune Do had evolved past all other fighting styles, while others stood by Chuck, pointing to his discipline, championships, and military training. Suddenly, What had been mutual respect looked from the outside like a fight that would never end. Even after Bruce's tragic death in 1973, the debate refused to die. To this day, fans still argue online and at conventions who would have actually won in a real fight. No matter how often Norris praised Bruce's brilliance, the world kept feeding the myth of two warriors forever locked in combat. Now, on to number 6, Michael Moore, the documentarian who pushed Chuck Norris over the edge. When Chuck Norris blasted Hollywood for turning its back on American values, one name stood right at the center of that anger: Michael Moore. Moore built his fame off controversy, creating documentaries like Bowling for Columbine, 2002, and Fahrenheit 9/11, 2004, calling out everything from U.S. foreign policy to gun ownership. For millions of conservatives, his movies weren't just documentaries. They felt like personal attacks on everything they stood for. And for Chuck Norris, that crossed a line. To him, Moore wasn't just questioning politics. He was mocking the country, its traditions, and the very values Chuck dedicated his life to defending. Chuck Norris has always defended the Second Amendment with the same iron will he brought into the dojo. To him, the right to bear arms wasn't just about protection. It was about freedom itself. He penned passionate columns praising responsible gun ownership and warning Americans to stay alert against anyone trying to strip that right away. So when Michael Moore's Bowling for Columbine hit the screens, painting American gun culture as reckless and dangerous, Chuck wasn't about to stay silent. He fired back, his way. In one of his boldest statements, he declared, "When you take away guns, you take away freedom." That wasn't just a catchy quote. It was a battle line drawn in stone. Chuck wasn't talking politics. He was defending what he saw as the heart of the nation's independence. From that moment, a war of words erupted. Moore kept using his films to slam conservative values, while Norris turned his columns, interviews, and online posts into his own counterattack. It was like two heavyweights fighting from different arenas, one behind the camera, the other behind the keyboard. But every punch landed in public view. They never met face to face, but they didn't have to. Their clash became symbolic. Two powerful voices representing opposite sides of America's cultural divide. The media ate it up, framing them as the ultimate ideological rivals, one pushing for change, the other fighting to preserve tradition. Years passed, but the fire never cooled. Moore kept pushing progressive messages, while Norris kept warning about the cost of forgetting old-school values. Their feud never found peace. It just evolved with time. And there it stands today, a battle with no handshake, no ending scene, just two men standing firm on what they believe in. A reminder that not all fights play out on movie screens. Some unfold in the heart of America itself. By the time the 2000s rolled around, Chuck Norris had survived every kind of battle, on screen and off. But the toughest fight wasn't against a villain or a rival actor, it was against Hollywood itself. For decades, he had been the symbol of strength, honor, and patriotism. A man who stood tall when the world bent under pressure. Yet suddenly, that same industry that once cheered his name began treating him like an outsider. It started quietly. Producers stopped calling. Studios passed on his pitches. Reporters who once begged for interviews started writing think pieces about how Chuck Norris doesn't fit the modern world. It wasn't about his talent. It was about his beliefs. Hollywood was shifting fast, and Norris's old-school values didn't line up with the new narrative. Friends in the business started distancing themselves, worried that being seen with him might hurt their careers. People whispered that Chuck had fallen out of touch, but those who knew him best said he hadn't changed at all. Hollywood had. For Chuck, loyalty and discipline never went out of style. He stayed focused on his faith, his family, and his mission to keep inspiring others. But make no mistake, the rejection stung. To him, it wasn't about fame anymore. It was about principle. Then came a moment that reignited his fire. In an interview, a journalist asked if he ever regretted speaking out about his beliefs, considering how much backlash he'd faced. Chuck didn't hesitate. He looked straight into the camera and said, "If standing up for what you believe in costs you everything, then you were never free to begin with." That quote blew up online. Some called it defiant. Others called it heroic. But one thing was clear. Chuck wasn't backing down. His fans rallied around him, flooding social media with messages of support. "Chuck's still the real deal," one post read. Another said, "Hollywood might have canceled him, but America never will." That wave of love reminded Norris of why he'd started this journey in the first place. It was never about awards or red carpets. It was about inspiring people to live with courage, even when the world turns against you. Behind the scenes, though, the tension only grew. Some insiders claimed that several networks quietly blacklisted him, labeling his views too controversial. But Norris never begged for approval. Instead, he built his own projects, smaller productions focused on integrity, strength, and faith. Each one was a message to the industry. You can silence a man's spotlight, but not his spirit. In the end, Chuck Norris stood where few in Hollywood dared, unbroken, unshaken, and unapologetic. His journey from martial arts champion to cultural rebel showed the world that real power doesn't come from fame. It comes from standing tall when everyone else bows. Through every fight, feud, and fallout, Chuck Norris proved one thing: legends don't fade, they evolve. Hollywood might have moved on, but the man who kicked his way into pop culture history never stopped standing tall. Even as the cameras grew quieter, his influence only got louder. Think about it. Memes, jokes, quotes, even school kids who've never seen Walker, Texas Rangers still know his name. That's power, that's legacy, and behind all those internet punchlines, there's a real story. A story about discipline, loyalty, and a man who refused to let fame rewrite who he was. While other stars chased trends, Chuck stayed grounded. He turned his focus toward mentoring young martial artists, investing in faith-based projects, and writing motivational pieces that reminded people to stay strong in a soft world. He didn't need to prove himself to Hollywood anymore. He'd already built something bigger, respect that time couldn't erase. But don't think the fire went out. Every now and then, he drops a quote or a rare appearance that shakes the internet like an earthquake. In one recent interview, he smiled and said, "People keep asking if I'm done. I tell them, discipline never retires." That line went viral overnight. Fans flooded the comments saying, "Chuck's still teaching life lessons while the rest just chase headlines." And that's what separates him from everyone else. He never sold out for applause. Whether he was standing beside Bruce Lee, clashing with Steven Seagal, or being mocked by Hollywood elites, Chuck always fought his battles with dignity. He might not be on every magazine cover anymore, but his story keeps echoing, loud, raw, and real. Today, his legacy lives across generations. To some, he's the ultimate martial arts icon. To others, he's a symbol of American grit. And to millions, he's proof that standing by your values, even when it costs you, makes you stronger than any spotlight ever could. So as we close out this list of rivalries, clashes, and untold stories, one thing's clear. Chuck Norris didn't just survive Hollywood, he conquered it his way. The world may keep changing, but legends like him, they never go out of style. If you enjoyed diving into these wild Hollywood showdowns and the untold truths behind the action star himself, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that hit just as hard. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.